the work of an Iowa-based organization, Bailing Out Benji, kind of helped spark this investigation. Can you tell me about that?
That resolution filed in King County Superior Court requires the company to pay the state $3.75 million with interest.
Bailing Out Benji
regularly looks through these records of dogs' movement from state to state.
Bailing Out Benji
played a key part in unraveling a nationwide puppy scheme.
Bailing Out Benji,
an organization that's been working across the country to stop the pipeline of puppy mill breeders.
Bailing Out Benji.
I will use my voice because it will come, and I will keep doing it until there are no more puppy mill dogs. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bailing Out Benji's podcast, Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills. My name is Mindy Callison, and I'm the executive director and founder of Bailing Out Benji, and today I'm going to be your episode host. I cannot believe that our first podcast started 5 years ago. We created it out of necessity because the pandemic had shut down the world, our events were canceled, our volunteers were spread across the country with no way of connecting, and we wanted to make sure that we continued this conversation in a way that made everybody feel heard and engaged. I'm even more surprised that the podcast not only ran for over 2 years, it stopped 3 years ago. It's something that has been on my mind to bring back. I've talked about it dozens of times, but the practicality of sitting down and recording an entire show while still handling the weight of running an entire nonprofit was something that caused me deep anxiety. I just wasn't sure how I could balance it all. But seeing how people are feeling the same way as they were 5 years ago, just a little more disconnected, a little further apart, we decided that it was time to bring this podcast back. So thank you for joining us. For our friends who listened to the first podcast, welcome back. We're going to touch base on some of the old topics that we covered before. We might not get in depth topic by topic about what puppy mills are, what pet stores are, and things like that. But we are going to keep this conversation going, and we are so excited to bring back old guests, to highlight members of our organization, and to also bring in some new guests so we can all continue talking about how we can help end puppy mill cruelty for animals and protect consumers from the predatory financing and sales practices that often happen when they're buying a new puppy. For new friends who are listening for the first time, you're going to meet Bailing Out Benji, and in this episode, you're going to hear how we started and why we do what we do. It really takes all of us to put an end to puppy mills, and it's not always just people who look like you and me. So we're going to talk a lot about the different ways that a lot of different organizations and humans are trying to help the dogs that are still trapped. At Bailing Out Benji, we say research before you buy, which is the title of this episode for a very specific reason. I, the person who founded this nonprofit, I bought a puppy from a puppy mill because I didn't know any better. I fell for the predatory financing. I fell for the pet stores gimmicks and the sales tactics. Me, the founder of Bailing Out Benji. But that's why our nonprofit had to start. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. In 2009, I was away from home for the first time. I was one of the first family members to go to college. My family didn't have a lot of financial literacy when it came to credit cards and loans and saving money and all of that it entails. And going away to college for the first time was scary. I lived off campus with my 2 cats. I was an education major. I wanted to teach the little kids and help them form their way of thinking and instill good values in them while they're young. I was a cheerleader for basketball. I was in the education club. I was the assistant manager of a Casey's gas station. If you're in the Midwest, you know. And so I was busy. I loved staying busy. I still love being really busy. But a friend and I decided to just go visit the puppies at the local pet store. We had no intention of buying. We, again, were poor college students, and I had more on my plate than I could handle. But I still wanted to go and play with the puppies because that's kind of what college kids do, which is why there is a high volume of pet stores located in college towns. So, anyway, my friend and I go in, and I honestly had never seen a puppy selling pet store. I'm not sure at this point in time if I had even been into an animal shelter. My sister and I, and my family, we grew up houseless. We lived in tents and camping trailers and cars and motels, and with family. We bounced around so much when we were little that we never really had pets in the way that most families do. Instead, my sister and I constantly found stray cats to take care of. Whatever new place we were living in that week, there was always a cat around. There were always several cats around. And so we always took them in, we fed them, we took care of them as much as we could, and then unfortunately we moved on to the next place and found new animals to give safe harbor to while we could. And so with that knowledge, walking into the pet store and seeing a wall full of puppies was pretty startling. I'm describing essentially aquarium style kennels where these puppies just lived 24/7. And so I walked in and I saw every breed of dog imaginable. I had never even experienced so many breeds. It was a first for me. And so as I'm like, looking at all of the puppies and all of the kennels, a salesperson came up and asked me if I wanted to play with the dog. And I said, of course, like I'd love to hold a dog. They asked me if I had a preference, and I said, no, I just wanted to snuggle a puppy. And so they grabbed out an 8-week-old Siberian Husky puppy. We went to a little room to play with the puppy. He was biting me. He was naughty. Had so much fun, just loving on this little boy. And as we were getting ready to leave, we went to hand the puppy back, and the pet store associate was like, "Oh, don't you want to buy him today? He loves you. You're his mommy." And I was like, "Oh no, thank you so much. I can't afford a puppy. I don't have time for a puppy." And then the sales pitch started. "Yours, mommy. He loves you. He needs to be home with you. He'd rather be home with you than here at the store. Just think about it. Oh, look how happy he is. Look, he's giving you kisses." And they really just played into that emotional side of me as a young college girl. And so as I kept pushing back, I finally, admitted, "I'm so sorry. I don't have any money. I cannot afford this puppy. I love him. He is cute, but this is not something I can afford at the time." And they said back in 2009, "Do you know what? We have a store credit card and we would love to help you buy the puppy today. Do you want to at least sign up and see if you qualify for a credit card?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, I don't know about it." And they're like, "There's no money down today and you won't get your first bill for 90 days," or something like that. It was later that month. I was not going to see a bill that day. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, let's at least run it and we'll see." And lo and behold, little Mindy Callison walked out the store that day with an 8-week-old Siberian Husky who cost $1,500, and a kennel, and treats, and toys, and food, all of that on my credit card. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that I even thought twice about where my puppy was born. I had, again, never even heard the term puppy mill. And so I'm sitting on my couch watching TV, and the local news does a story on Petland, specifically the Petland I bought my puppy in, and where my puppy was born. The breeder name on his paperwork was flashing on the screen for being a very large kennel in our state with violations. And I stopped in my tracks. I was so terrified. The news was telling me my puppy could be sick. My puppy might not live a long life. And at the time, now I see it differently, but at the time, I couldn't even see past my own toes. I didn't think twice about my puppy's mom back at the puppy mill, or dad, or grandparents, or siblings. Like, I was so concerned about my puppy that I wanted to do everything I could to make him have the best life. So it wasn't until around 2 years later when I moved to Ames, Iowa to start my education career. And my husband and I were walking on Main Street, and we saw a local puppy selling pet store. And all of those lessons kind of came flooding back. So I went in, and for those of you who know and have been around the whole time, clearly, I'm talking about Divix Pet Shop. But yes, so I walked into Divegs and the puppies were for sale in the window. They usually were cute little like white fluffy Bashan things, and he had them in the like black wire crates that you would have your dog in if you kenneled them for the day. And he had them stacked by the window so people walking by could see. And I walked in and I started asking him some questions about the puppies and then about the breeder more specifically, research before you buy. And I will be clear, I had no intention of buying. It was just curiosity, walking in and seeing something in my community again. And so I asked Dale Divik, the owner, where do you get your puppies from? And he gave me a business card of a USDA kennel in Iowa and said, well, if you'd like to go visit them, they do have people come to their property and buy directly. Feel free to make an appointment and go see for yourself. And so I did. Before I made the trip, I went on the USDA website and I was able to see that this facility at the time had over 160 adult dogs, and they did have violations. A lot of them were dirty kennels, cobwebs, things like that. It didn't paint a great picture for me when I was planning my trip to go see a USDA kennel for the first time. And so I went with a friend who was like a mom's age. We didn't outright call her my mom, but it was easy probably for the breeder to assume that she was my mom and I was her daughter. And we went to play with the puppies. So we drive up to this farm. It's in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. There's no paved roads. There's no public roads really anywhere near. It's all like country gravel. And so we pull in and we see the house, we see the office space where the puppies ended up being, and attached to the office space is what I now know is the whelping kennel. And there was a row of wire kennels sticking out of the building, so the moms could come out of that building, and it was wire bottom, so when they, went to the bathroom, it fell to the ground. They all looked pretty clean. They were just like, it was 15, 20 or so like white, fluffy Bashan dogs. And the owners were extremely kind. They seemed like grandparents. They really wanted to talk to us about why they did what they did. They showed us inside of their office space, like, different photos of families that have bought dogs. And eventually they put out a little puppy play pen and brought puppies out for us to see. When I approached the mama dogs in the wire kennel, again, I was at the time, 21, so I was still a kid. Again, not much contact with dogs either, but I went to pet the mama breeder dogs in the kennel, and immediately the wife starts like, no, 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 don't. So I jerk my hand back and I pause. I had no idea why she wanted me to stop what I was doing. And she warned me that they give the mama dogs hot dogs as treats. And if I were to stick my hands in the kennel, they would bite a finger off because they assume that my fingers are hot dogs. And I was like, okay, thank you for the warning. Had no idea. So I was backing off of that. And behind me was a huge metal Quonset building, like a big farm building. And that was it. So we had the house, the small office space with the 15 to 20 mama dogs, and then this huge farm building with no windows. And so, knowing what I knew about the USDA documents I read, I asked the breeders, what's in that kennel? I'd love to see what's in that kennel. And they responded, oh, those are the honeymoon suites. It is too romantic in there for you. You don't want to go in. And I was kind of taken aback. I wasn't expecting to hear that kind of explanation for what was going on inside of a breeding facility. But, I said, great, thank you so much for meeting with us today. And my friend and I left. I ran back to the pet store and I spoke with Dale, the owner, and I said, Dale, did you know? Did you know that this facility is a puppy mill? They have hundreds of dogs. They have violations. The dogs don't get to play outside. Like the website claimed they all get to run by this pond in the yard. And I didn't see anywhere for dogs to be able to run by a pond. And as I'm blurting out all of my concerns, he stops me. And Dale Divig says the most infamous words in my world at the moment. He said, you silly little girl. I've been buying from this breeder for decades. Get out of my store. And I was so shocked because I thought I was telling him new news. I truly thought that this person had no idea who he was doing business with. So I physically left the store. I'm not about catching a charge. I'm not going to have the police called to help me get out or escort me out of the store. Um, my body left, but my heart never did. And right after that, Bailing Out Benji started our weekly pet store protests. These protests were every single Saturday and Sunday for 6.5 years until the store ultimately closed. If you know anything about Iowa, it gets to be like -20 in the winter. Sometimes with our polar vortex that comes through, it feels like -50. In the summer, it can be 110, 115 degrees. And then we get this weird thing called corn sweat, which I'm absolutely not making up. But we have so much corn in our state that it gets so incredibly humid and the humidity gets trapped. So we're all kind of like baking in heat and humidity for a few weeks, no matter the temperature. Bailing Out Benji's volunteers were in front of that pet store. If it was -20, we were out there for 5, 10 minutes. We wanted that store owner to see that there were dogs suffering back at Puppy Mills because of his choices. And if the dogs had to live in those conditions, we decided it was important for us to be out there as well, to serve as that constant reminder. And what we were able to do with this is educate so many different members of the town we lived in, of Ames. We were right around the corner from the farmers market. So every Saturday, we got to have amazing conversations with people just going to shop at the farmers market. We spoke with so many people who really did want to do their research before they buy. They stopped to talk to us, they read the reports, they listened to what we had to say, and then they went to look for a breeder that they could actually meet in person. And the conversations that we had made it so we wanted to be there every single weekend. And I do want to say the store ended up closing on Sundays. He wasn't getting enough business and he didn't want us out there as often as we were. So he stopped going on Sundays. So we ended up getting Sundays off. But we did fun things like Mothers in the Mills protest, where on a normal protesting Saturday, we'd have 4 or 5 people. And for these big themed protests, we'd end up getting 40 or 50 people. We also did the 12 protests of Christmas, where we protested every single day leading up to Christmas. We did the 30 days, 30 protests in September, where we were in front of the pet store every single day for Puppy Mill Awareness Month. If there was a reason for us to be there, we wanted to be there. We wanted the store owner to know that people want better options for our community. And so in about 2014, I got a weird email from this guy claiming to be a director, and he saw our protests on social media. He saw that they were just hosted by random people in the community. We weren't founded by a national organization. We weren't led by anyone that had been really around. We were just some people in the community who wanted to make a difference. And we were out there when it was always cold. At the time when he emailed, it was winter. And I'll tell you, at first I thought it was a scam. I was like, why does someone want to interview us? What's their angle? What's going on here? And we ended up having a few phone conversations before I agreed to have him come to Ames and interview our volunteers. And it was such an amazing thing because it was very cold that day, unfortunately. It was one of those -20 days. But to see 10 of our volunteers standing there with their signs, talking to a journalist, a documentary filmmaker about what we're doing and why it matters. It was the most inspiring. It felt so inspiring in the moment, and it feels so inspiring now. And I'll tell you, when I agreed to be a part of this film, I truly, truly thought when people saw it, it was going to end Puppy Mills. I'm very, very optimistic and honestly a little naive sometimes, right? I truly thought that this film showing the money behind why puppy mills exist and what everybody can do to help stop them, I thought once it hit the world, puppy mills would end. That didn't necessarily happen, but a lot of things did change. Dog by Dog had screenings all over the world. It was viewed in Parliament in the UK. It had screenings in New York City and in Philadelphia and in LA. We had the largest screening in Ames, Iowa, with over 400 people coming to our little town just to see this movie. It was such a cool experience for the first time knowing that like our efforts on the sidewalk, this group of like 10 people we were making a difference. Our voices were being heard in a way that we never could have dreamed. Once the film hit Netflix, our world really changed. We truly started getting people from all over. Instead of saying, thank you for what you're doing, they said, how do we do that here? How do we do that in our community? Rachel, who is now on our board, she was just an advocate in Austin, Texas. And she was like, we need Bailing Out Benji here. We've been working on an ordinance. We need your research. We need the way you think. Like, how can we bring Bailing Out Benji to Texas? And at the time I was like, I'm so sorry. We are just an Iowa group. I'm a full-time teacher. I do this on my nights and weekends and during nap time. I don't have the bandwidth or even the foresight to be able to think larger than Little Ames, Iowa right now. And Rachel truly encouraged me to really look into allowing volunteers to do our work in their communities. And I'm so excited that Texas did become the first state we moved to. And they did wonderful work in Austin, Texas. We still have a volunteer to this day there in Texas, Shannon. She's doing phenomenal work educating about puppy mills and puppy selling stores in Texas. From there, we moved to Wisconsin. Peggy, a local advocate there, read a book about puppy mills and wanted to get involved and wanted to help. We also moved to Nebraska because we had wonderful, and we still do, rescue support in that community who didn't want to see puppy mills selling to their stores and didn't want to see puppy mills causing harm to the animals in their state. So Bailing Out Benji slowly and methodically started inching into other states, and we have now created this huge grassroots organization of more than 200 volunteers who are working in their communities to make a difference. And so this may have started because of a few kids on the sidewalk in front of Divig's pet shop, but because of our ability to research and inspire people to do better and meet those people where they're at, we are having phenomenal success across the country. And so Dog by Dog didn't end puppy mills. It didn't end them overnight, and it's still available if you want to watch it. I think you can see it for free on YouTube right now. I know you can get it on Amazon. You can stream it there. It didn't necessarily end puppy mills, but it really put Bailing Out Benji on a path to something bigger. This is the first time that we had had any kind of like national attention on the work we were doing. And so we just kept at it. And in 2018, thanks to an incredible grant from a family foundation, I was able to leave my teaching career and hop over to do Bailing Out Benji full time, which was such an experience. It was so scary to honestly quit something that was secure, knowing that I could go to work every day and teach little kids. That was a really secure, financially secure, emotionally secure. Like I knew what to do every single day. But this foundation had faith that our research was going to change the world. And so they took a chance on Bailing Out Benji. And in 2018, that was when we were really able to focus heavily, even more heavily on our research. We created at the time, and still to my knowledge, the world's largest database of commercial dog breeders across the country. So for those of you who are unaware, every single month, Bailing Out Benji tracks USDA inspection records, so we know who's been inspected and who has violations. We always have the most current dog count in commercial kennels as well, because that's something we're able to track. So that's what we do monthly. Every quarterly, we release a report that talks about the violations that quarter. Specifically, we like to focus on the direct and the critical violations because those are the ones that are causing the most harm to animals in commercial breeding facilities. Every 6 months, we audit puppy store sales. So we get these documents, which we'll go into later, but we get these documents and we're able to see exactly which facilities pet stores are buying from across the country. So we make that public on our website. And now we're diving into the online puppy mill world. We are auditing online brokering websites to find out what breeders are selling through those websites and if those breeders have licenses. And then from there, we file complaints to make sure everyone's in compliance. And so our little database is growing every single day, but we're using it for good. On our website right now, you can go and see Iowa puppy store sourcing or Texas puppy store sourcing, and you can see a list of the puppy stores in that state and the breeders that they're buying from. We're putting a focus on the breeders with violations because some stores, like, honestly buy from over 100 dog breeders, and it is really hard to list every single breeder and whether or not they have a license and if they have any violations. It turns into like dozens of pages that the consumers would have to read through. But we're really excited to keep, growing that database and getting our information out there. Because we have so much publicly available, when people Google a pet store in their city, or if they Google a specific breeder, more often than not, they're winding up on our website and they are emailing us and asking if this is a safe place to buy from. The transition of these emails has been so interesting as well because 4 years ago, the emails we were getting were a lot of, oh no, I bought this dog, now he's sick. Or just, I bought this dog, can you tell me where they came from? It was always after the fact. And while we still get so many of those emails now, we're starting to get even more people who research before they buy. They email us before and say, hey, I was looking at this breeding facility. Is it safe? This facility kind of has red flags on their website. What can you tell me about them? So we're hearing from the public that they're asking these questions and they're doing their research before they buy. I actually had an interesting conversation with an Amish breeder last fall where they only sell direct to the public. They just do retail operations from their location. They don't sell through stores or brokers. And they said that in the past few years, people started coming with a list of questions. And I love hearing that. Like, I love knowing that we are arming the public. If they're going to buy, we're arming them with a list of questions to ask. So all of our research is used across the country to drive some of the most important policy work that you see in the news. You might not always see us credited. You might not always see our involvement directly, but our research is a huge driver in advocacy and education and policy work everywhere, which is really cool to see too, because at the end of the day, Bailing Out Benji is the smallest kid at the table. I mean that literally and figuratively too. If you haven't met me in person yet, I'm like 5'2". So a lot of people see me speaking online or see photos or just know what Bailing Out Benji does, and they assume that I'm this very tall person. My personality is big, so they assume that I take up a lot of space. And then they meet me and realize how small I am. It's the same for Bailing Out Benji. We do huge things. We do things on this scale that national organizations do, and we get in the news a lot because our work is important. So you would think that based on our reputation, we are this large organization. But in all reality, we just hired our fourth staff person, full-time staff person. And so what we do behind the scenes is so incredibly important, but it's also taxing on our time. Alexis and I typically are the only ones who do research. We do have Rosie who works part-time for us, who helps as well. But we have a very, very small amount of people working on this. And so the fact that our reputation precedes us and people everywhere are using our work and journalists are constantly reaching out, it makes me so proud. It's so proud to know that just because I was a kid who bought a pet store puppy, I supported the puppy mill industry, but then I learned and I did better. And so when Bailing Out Benji, was founded, it was clearly founded by a consumer. I wasn't big into the rescue world. Of course, now focus on adoption. My husband and I we only adopt dogs at this point. We don't go to, pet stores or breeders, but that's not what other customers are doing. That's not the decision they're making. We see people, hundreds of people every day going online to buy a puppy or walking into a pet store to buy a puppy. And so Bailing Out Benji has really really realize that we can't only talk to the people who only adopt, right? That's an echo chamber. And so if you're an adopt don't shop person and you're only going to adopt your dogs, we need your support. We need your help educating, but we have to keep thinking of new and creative ways to reach the people who are only going to buy. Because just like there are people who only adopt, there are people who only buy. And so trying to meet those people where they're at and remove the shame, remove the judgment, and just try to have honest conversations with them about why it's important to not just buy quickly, to not just click and have something shipped to you, or walk into a store and just buy on impulse. The most important thing that we can do as consumers is pause and think about our purchase before we make it. And it's the same for animals. So that's a big reason why Bailing Out Benji, we say research before you buy. And it's been a really hard conversation over the last 9 months, because now that we're really telling people research before you buy, the world isn't necessarily black and white. The puppy mill industry is a lot more three-dimensional than we ever thought before or ever acknowledged before. Now more than ever, our money matters. And if members of the public are the one funding puppy mills with their purchase, then they're the ones that have the power to end puppy mills. So in upcoming episodes, you're going to sit down with me and Alexis Bell, and you're going to hear us talk about our research. We're going to go really in depth so you understand how we do what we do, and some of the conversations behind the numbers that we're seeing, because some of the numbers might surprise you. How many puppy mills are existing across the country? How many dog breeders in general? How many dogs are in those breeding facilities? This is stuff that not a lot of people are tracking. So Bailing Out Benji is making it a point to make the most inclusive database, so we know exactly what we're talking about when we go to speak or testify or anything like that. You're going to hear from our volunteers who are working in their communities. They are protesting, they are tabling, they are trying to pass humane ordinances. They are our boots on the ground, and they are our lifeline. They are closest to the community. They're closest to the puppy buyers. And so we get a lot of feedback about that. And I'm excited to share all of that with you. And also, we might have some people on that challenge our way of thinking a little bit. So we might hear on our last podcast, we had a breeder of Clumber Spaniels join us, and she spoke to us about the doodle craze. And so I'm excited to bring other diverse voices onto our podcast so we can continue having conversations that make us think a little differently. So I guess I want to leave you all with this. You never know what is going to happen after someone buys a dog. So when our volunteers are out there protesting, it's always a celebration when no puppies are sold that day. But you always feel a little defeated when a puppy was sold, right? You're standing there protesting. Your sign says research before you buy, don't support puppy mills, and then a puppy gets sold. It's hard not to take that personally, but from personal experience, you never know what that person's going to hear afterwards. And so if we remain a positive source of information and a positive line of communication with these puppy buyers, we're going to help them make better choices in the future. And to be honest, Bailing Out Benji wouldn't exist if it not for a little girl who bought a puppy in a pet store and learned better and did better. And so I want you to leave today with that message. Remember that there are a lot of different strategies to get to our goal. And we don't have to be enemies with people who work differently than us, or who think differently than us, or who have different tactics in order to end puppy mill sales in their state, in their community, all of that it entails. We are not enemies. We are all people on this earth who, at the end of the day, are just trying to make it home, right? That's all we're trying to do. And so if we can show each other kindness and grace, it's going to go a lot further, especially with the puppy buying public. These are people who are going to do what they want to do. If they want to buy a puppy, they're going to. So we have to reach them and have them research before they buy. Thank you all so much for listening to the first episode of Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills. I promise it's not just going to be me talking the whole time. You are going to hear from other people, and they are so excited to have conversations with you as well. If you are on social media, you can find Bailing Out Benji we're actively right now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Substack. And you can also make a donation to us if you feel so inclined. As I mentioned earlier, the work we do is really important, and we do it on a very small budget with very few people behind the scenes working on it. So you can always go to our website and make a donation and help support our work. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.